Today is going to be a little bit different than my normal teardown. A lot of you know I own and run an auto salvage facility in the St. Louis area, and I don't buy just anything. I have a kind of small footprint here, so I can't buy anything that goes to the auction. So I try to lean towards niche market vehicles and the cool versions of normal vehicles, which is pretty much all I've got here. And I do buy stuff that I own as well, which is why I have a collection of 80 series Land Cruisers parts trucks. And no, I don't have any of them inventoried yet, but that will probably change soon. Anyhow, any vehicle that we buy that doesn't run through the auction, we try to get it to run. I like to stand behind every drivetrain component I sell, whether it's engine, transmission, differential. I like to know everything there is to know about it. So we will go through great lengths to get cars running. And this 300,000 mile 94 Land Cruiser is no exception. I know you're saying, who the hell buys a 300,000 mile engine? Well, there is a market, albeit it's not worth as much as it would be if it had 150,000 miles, but I still would like to get it running. And I don't know what kind of train or tank this thing hit or how fast it was going, but it didn't feel good. And a lot of stuff is broken, but I have a couple other trucks here I can rob some parts off of to try to get it to start. Worst case scenario, I can get it to crank so I can do a compression and a leak down test. That's like second best for me, but I like to hear everything run. I don't normally talk about the tools I use, but I'm going to in this case. I've got a hammer, normal pliers, socket set, my impact, my power ratchet, a little pry bar. I'm also going to use a Sawzall today, an angle grinder. I've also got tools like this, which is called a hustler stick. This works pretty cool. This is kind of like a poor man's frame rack. I use this to pull sheet metal away from engines so I can check for damage before we get the engine out, so I don't have to go through such crazy lengths. But you just kind of put it here, and then kind of like hook it to something like this, and then you can pull on stuff. But you know, it has its limitations, especially when you don't put it on something strong, but it does make stuff move. Sometimes it's just enough to pull the metal off of whatever you're wanting to look at. So I use this quite a bit when we inventory cars, so I can verify that engines and transmissions have no broken bolt bosses or anything that's going to need work prior to installation. And a 1980 Caterpillar 910 front wheel loader. Well, let's see how bad this really is. Yeah, that's good. Oh, cool. Well, water's been getting into this engine, so that's going to be fun, but not the end of the world. Yeah, that looks safe. Yeah. So we got a lot of broken stuff. Well, we've got a few broken things here. The main thing that's concerning to me is the fuse box, which that's what this thing was. The battery will come out pretty easy. Obviously, the radiator's broken, the distributor's broken. Looks like the alternator's broken, power steering reservoir's broken. There's a couple things broken, but the oil cap is also broken, and it looks like it's been broken for some time. So I'm probably going to have to drain the water out of the crankcase before I go to run this thing. But this side looks pretty good. Not too much contact. The fan's broken. Nothing that I wouldn't expect to be broken in an accident of this magnitude. The first thing I'm going to do to kind of make this a little easier is get the hood out of the way. I'll go ahead and unbolt that. Gonna kind of throw all the bolts inside the truck and just give this a little help off of here. You gotta be careful not to scratch anything. Now I'm gonna unbolt this top tie bar of the core support. There's a whole bunch of stuff that bolts to it that's annihilated, like the AC condenser, the trans cooler. We'll get this stuff out of the way, but start zipping some bolts out. You'll see everything kind of move as I start to unbolt everything. That's not the right size. All right, we are making progress already. All right. So one of the things we're going to do to keep from making a mess when this thing does crank, because it's going to crank, is we're going to loop the trans cooler. We're not really going to put the vehicle under a bunch of strain. You know, we're not going to drive it. I think the steering arms broke, or the steering box is broke anyway. But we're going to take one hose off of here and loop it to one of the other tranny cooler lines. That way the system stays sealed, and I don't have to clean up my parking lot any more than I normally do. So we can kind of start getting an idea how bad everything is here. which is bad, as you'd expect. Wow, don't think it's as bad as I thought it was. I don't think this thing has any Freon in it. We're going to test that theory right now. EPA, don't look. Aha. Okay, EPA, you can watch. Can't quite get on top of that. Nope. Nope, that's a later problem. But I think it's time for some more power here. Well, hey, look, I know that wasn't pretty. That was actually pretty terrible, but I got some stuff out of the way. Looks like the water neck is broken. The distributor, that's broken, and it actually broke the bolt off the head. So that's going to be a little tricky. I think that only bolts on with one bolt. And yeah, there's parts of the distributor, but the connector is in good shape, and that's important. I don't have to fix that. All the plug wires are present, so that's cool. The one that goes to the coil appears to be unharmed, and the alternator is broke, like we thought. Yeah, we didn't need that. Get some of this other plastic and stuff out of the way. Yeah, this makes a big mess, but this is the only way to know whether something made it or not. And then I've got to get that battery out of the way, and this really needs to get out of the way too, but I think I can live with that. But I don't see any glaring broken components of this engine, so we're going to go ahead and get an oil cap on it, get it towed up to the power washer, and get this thing cleaned up so I can see what I'm working on. I've got this thing towed in and on the rack, which, by the way, these are kind of difficult to put on a two-post rack because the frame rails are very narrow, so you have to have your arms in the right spot, plus the solid front axle, there's not a lot of places to put the front arms. Anyway, I got it racked, and we're going to see how bad it really is. I think I mentioned before that the distributor was pretty much destroyed, and it is. There it is right here. Actually, we can probably get that out of the way. There we go. There's the distributor. That's a project for later. The good news is that the connector for it is intact. That's a great sign. So, I've got to replace the distributor, and it also sheared the bolt off that holds the distributor on. So that's going to take a little bit of welding. It also broke the water neck up here, and the alternator is no longer mounted, but I would imagine the wiring in the back is okay. Oh, we've got some aluminum bits right here. It's not a nugget. But we'll get this out, and we'll get the wiring secured because we don't want to set this thing on fire when we put battery power to it. And I don't think we're going to hang another alternator on it, but the intake manifold appears to be okay. There's part of the water outlet. But the big thing is the cylinder head and the timing cover. I don't see any damage, which is astounding. Just absolutely astounding by how hard this thing was hit. It looks like the things that are easy to replace were the things that took the hit first. That's just amazing. I thoroughly expected this engine to be bad when I bought this truck. I did not expect to get a good engine, so the fact that I might have something I can sell, that's pretty impressive. Now we're going to get this thing all the way up and see what kind of damage is on the bottom. Just because the top's good doesn't mean the bottom is. Well, for starters, there's a lot of grease here. I would be willing to bet that this housing is broken right. Oh, look at that. It's got a broken off stud right here. And that was probably from the accident. It's got two actually. Yeah, that stud sheared off. That takes a lot of force to break a couple of these studs. A lot. But more importantly, look at that pan. We're going to have to peel that off of there and probably swap it with another one here because I don't really feel like trying to weld up a dirty, nasty pan. I mean, yeah, I could run it through the parts washer, but I'd also like to sell this engine, and I don't want to have a pan that has been beat out and welded on. I might as well just swap it with one of the ones I have from a bad engine. But very important, the mounting arms for the engine mount arms are not broken. The bolts aren't sheared off in the block. And that was a major concern. It looks like the things that took most of the damage, like this pan here, that was damage from the drive shaft making contact. This whole front end is actually bent over to the left. Check out this shock. That'll give you an idea of how hard this thing was hit. It's likely that this whole front axle was pushed over. That took a direct hit. The whole right side of this thing's hit as well as the left front. I don't know what happened in this accident, but it bent every control arm, both lower arms. It bent all of the, like the drag link. Everything's bent. The front drive shaft is probably bad as well. I'll probably have to look at that and get that off. But everything's bent up here, and I kind of counted that. Hopefully the front differential itself is good and I can sell the third member. But at this point, I'm not counting that either because that looks pretty bad. Here's another look at it. You can see that the steering arm is bent, the drag link is bent, and actually I'm pretty sure this axle housing is bent in a C shape, which is really impressive. One of the stronger parts of this truck. The frame is actually bent up here at the front, which we kind of expected that, but I don't see any damage to the upper pan, which is the thing I would not want to change. It is very dirty and greasy, and it's dripping from me power washing it, but it's not broken, which that is the most important. Now we're going to get this battery out of the way, which has its own hazards, of course. You know, I don't want to get anything not so great on me. There we are. Now we just got to get it unbolted and safely out of the way. Please don't get acid on me. Yeah, that's not scary. Oh man, there's relays everywhere. Okay, so I'm going to have to unbolt this ground, feed that through that. We don't need that anymore. Aha, now we can get an idea of what this looks like. And we can get this alternator out of the way, which is very... I didn't need any tools for that. It's unclipped. Connectors are still good. Look at that. It's coming apart like it's supposed to. There's one very broken alternator that still spins. That's amazing. So there's a relay. It lost its home. And there's a pile of fuses and stuff. Boy, this harness is kind of scary here. That's a little on the, that's going to take some time to figure out. How am I going to do that? I'm up for a challenge. Half this stuff doesn't do anything anyway. Just need to feed it fuses and figure out what's supposed to go where. You see like this? Yeah, let's get out of here. The important thing is that I don't see very many. Okay, there's a couple broken wires. There's not that many. I think we can do this with relays just hanging out here. Here's kind of what we're working with. This fuse box is blown apart. And there's a couple pinched wires, but I don't see anything cut or frayed. I don't actually see any of the material inside. So I'm feeling pretty good about this. I think I can get this back together. And it looks like the harness got hit pretty hard in this location. There's two big jumper harnesses, and it just totally broke these connectors over here. And this connector's broken. Looks like the ABS pump took a hit. Everything took a hit. I mean, even the brake booster is smashed. This harness, on the other hand, this is a headlight harness. This did not survive. I mean, sure, the loader might have done a little bit of damage. Okay, a lot. But the rest of this is pretty messed up. So we didn't really plan on driving this thing anyway. We just want to hear the engine run. Hopefully. Found a bunch of more fuses down there when I started digging around. Got my work cut out. Before I go through all kinds of time and effort, let's see if this engine turns over. You don't know what happened in the wreck, and I definitely don't want to do all this work to find out it's locked up, but it turns over, and it has compression. So that's cool. Happy about that. Yep. Cool. I think this thing will be just fine. Socket can stay there. Now we're going to drain the oil, or should I say water. I have a pan ready just in case. I think that's tighter than it should be. Again, I think this pan is ruptured, so I don't know what's going to come out, if anything. But I don't want to mix any water in the oil. My waste oil guy would not enjoy that. Oh, there's nothing. Okay, well that's easy. Let's go ahead and get this lower pan off. It doesn't look too difficult. It's just a ring of 10mm bolts. Now we're getting somewhere. There we go. Oh boy. That's not a good sign. Well, there's a little bit of debris in here. I don't really like seeing that. It's actually I think it's black RTV. I don't think there's nothing metal in here, so that's a good sign. The bad sign is, why is there, oh, that might have been an O-ring. No, I think this is just all RTV. This is why I like to pull pans from a lot of engines, because you just never know. So we'll get this cleaned off. I've reached a stopping point, which I'm going to call the teardown and assessment. And we do this with just about every car that comes in here. We try to get it running, we check fluids, we put pans on cars, done harness repair, computer repair, we put fuse boxes in. The list is endless because I like to stand behind what I sell. I do not sell question marks here. And you might be asking, who is going to buy an engine with 300,000 miles that's blasted in the front? Who is that customer? Well, the fact is that 9 times out of 10, these trucks get fixed when the engine fails, whether it's a blown head gasket or tosses a rod or develops rod knock. Whatever the issue may be, people are fixing these trucks. The value of these things has gone through the roof in the last 5 years. I think I've paid $2,500 for my LX450 like 7 or 8 years ago, which that just doesn't happen anymore. So I'm happy to have an engine that at the very worst case is a good buildable core, and I know what's wrong with it. but I think this engine's going to be good. It doesn't make it to 300,000 miles by accident. And I also like this part of the job. This is probably one of the most fun parts of this job next to buying cars. You guys know I kind of enjoy that a little too much. But driving into a car that you haven't heard run, it's kind of a challenge to get it to start, especially ones that have sat for a long time or have hit a train at 500 miles an hour. You just never know what you're going to find. So it's always a mystery and it's always a good time. I hope you enjoyed this video and the part 2 where we start swapping parts on, fill it full of oil and crank it. That might be just around the corner, so don't forget to subscribe, and I'll catch you on the next update.